Hello everyone, I hope you're all keeping well, healthy and happy. In this video I am going to talk about the plan for a full-scale ground invasion of Syria by US troops. I'm also going to tell you the origin of this plan. But before we get into that, it is incredibly important that we understand the events that have unfolded over the last 48 hours. Today, H.R. McMaster, who is Trump's national security advisor, said publicly in an interview that the goal is to take out ISIS and Assad. Nikki Haley, who is the US ambassador at the UN, also said in a live television interview that removing President Bashar al-Assad from power is a priority. We also have Rex Tillerson stating that the goal is regime change. All three of these people are singing off the same hymn sheet. Make no mistake about it. The media will try and muddy the waters with regards to this. I assure you they are not muddy. Okay? Also within the last 24 hours, we had a massive US troop build-up across the Jordanian-Syrian border. There was also an incursion into Syrian territory by 20 US military vehicles, including tanks. Now, this was a spec op, according to certain reports, but the activity was particularly unusual. It was supposedly in response to an attack by ISIS, but at this point in time, it is now becoming difficult to believe anything that is coming out of official reports. All of this is relevant because there is an agenda at play here. Now, who is H.R. McMaster? H.R. McMaster formerly worked for the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR, one of the biggest globalist organizations there is, that obviously advised on and supported and beat the drums of war in the case of the Iraq War. McMaster was the replacement for Flynn after General Flynn was fired. Okay? McMaster also, according to reports from an independent journalist, has been manipulating intelligence reports that were being given to the President of the United States. McMaster has also presented a plan to Congress for 150,000 ground troops to be stationed in an invasion in Syria. So he's already drawn up an invasion scenario. Let us make no mistake, these people like McMaster, Nikki Haley and Rex Tillerson are extraordinarily dangerous to global stability. Also, within the last 24 hours, just today, K.T. McFarland, who is against any sort of invasion or incursion into Syria, was fired from the National Security Council. Steve Bannon, who is against the war, was fired. General Flynn, of course, was fired for being against any sort of incursion into Syria. There are now also plans to remove Seb Gorka from the Trump administration because he is against any military incursion into Syria. Are we starting to see what is developing here yet? Or are people still blind to the reality? So, all these people that are denying that this is going to become an invasion or that a war would in some sense be good for the United States, despite the fact that there are no US assets at risk in Syria. The Syrian government has not attacked the US in any way, shape or form. There was no provocation at the US to the US, there was no threat. So again, one is in a difficult position here because I don't understand why. Well, actually, I do know why, and part of the reason why I'm making this video is to tell you why this is happening. But morally speaking, it's unjustifiable that we are going to war here. There are a lot of people that have put forward the reason or the excuse that, well, President Assad gassed his own people with chemical weapons, with sarin gas and so forth. Well, there are a few problems with this. First of all, Back in 2013, when the sarin gas attacks were reported in the global media, everyone was screaming that Bashar al-Assad had carried that attack out. It turned out in hindsight that in point of fact he had not. What had happened was, according to intelligence reports, actual intelligence reports from intelligence agencies, was that the Saudi Arabians had sold sarin gas to a group of terrorists/rebels inside Syria who had released sarin gas. So it was the rebels that carried that attack out. The second point to make in regards to this is that McMaster has been manipulating intelligence reports, as I stated. So when your national security advisor is producing the intelligence, or tweaking the intelligence, let us say, to present a particular point of view, then the intelligence reports themselves are compromised, as I stated in my previous video. There's a further angle to this as well, which I'll cover just now. Under the Bush administration, the Bush-Cheney administration changed the rules with regards to intelligence. This is very, very important for people to understand. You see, previously what happened was that the CIA, the DIA, and the NSA, among others, including the NRO and so forth, would produce intelligence assessments with regards to specific threats from foreign nations or terror threats or whatever else it might be. And those reports were then forwarded to the President of the United States so that he could make his judgment. Well, the Bush-Cheney administration changed that. In the present times, and during the Bush administration, the government started to create what was called government assessments, which came out of the Department of Defense or came from the inner circle that were sitting on the National Security Council. So this is part of the reason why intelligence reports at this point in time are untrustworthy, because political figures are producing them, not the intelligence services. This is a very important distinction to make. If government assessments are done, they cannot be trusted because there is always a political agenda and a political bias behind them. Okay? Now, again, a lot of people won't tell you that. So, these are key things to understand. But the question is, where did this plan that the CFR and others who have been following this plan for destabilization of the Middle East, where did they get this idea from? Well, in 1996, a study was carried out on behalf of now Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, by a group of neocons, including James Colbert, Charles Fairbanks Jr., Jonathan Torop, Douglas Feith, Richard Pearl, David Wormser, Myrov Wormser, and Robert Lowenberg. And this study was called A Clean Break, a New Strategy for Securing the Realm. Let me repeat that so that you can look it up for yourselves and research exactly what I am talking about here. It is called A Clean Break, a New Strategy for Securing the Realm. In this study, it speaks explicitly and at length about the removal of Saddam Hussein from Iraq. It also speaks about the destabilization and the destruction of Syria as a policy. These are the policies which are now being instituted. In 2002, Brian Whitaker, a journalist for the UK newspaper The Guardian, wrote that the plan for reshaping the Middle East looks a good deal more achievable today than it did in 1996. The plan he was talking about was exactly this study. Again, let me mention the name again, A Clean Break, a New Strategy for Securing the Realm. In March 2003, political figure Pat Buchanan wrote, "The plan has been imposed now by Pearl, Feith, Wormser and co. on the United States." In short, what has happened here, and what is currently happening, is that the US administration, the Trump administration, has been completely subverted by neocons and individuals who have a very specific set of political ideologies in play. It is no accident that the mainstream media is supporting military action in Syria, when before they have not supported Donald Trump at all. It is no accident that Hillary Clinton is supporting Donald Trump now, all of a sudden. It is no accident that the Saudi Arabian regime is supporting Donald Trump. It is no accident that the Israeli regime is supporting Donald Trump. None of these things are accidents. You've got people like Bill Kristol supporting the Trump action, when previously he was a never-Trumper. When all of these people, including John McCain, are supporting your actions, these being the missile strike and the impending regime change scenario, again, you can tell that you are morally compromised. When people that were against any military incursion into Syria are being fired, are being taken out of the Trump administration, you can be sure that the Trump administration is now no longer supporting the interests of the American people. How does this put America first? How is it benefiting America to be drawn into a full-scale war in the Middle East once again, where destabilization will occur? Where your sons and your daughters will be sent to war to die, their blood will be spilled, so that they can kill other people's sons and daughters. All for the purpose of destabilizing that region, regime change, and potentially an oil pipeline. And there are people that still want to argue that this is not actually what's happening. The invasion isn't going to happen. This is just kabuki theatre. I've heard idiots, absolute idiots, argue this point. It is not kabuki theatre. This is very real. The same events happened just before the Iraq War. The same events happened just before the destabilization of Libya. Okay? The Russians and the Iranians have already said that they will now use force. They are on record publicly stating that they will use force to prevent the United States from attacking Syria. These are two states that are armed with nuclear weapons. We also have this idiocy with regards to North Korea. Need I remind you all that North Korea have nuclear weapons? If they decide to wipe out South Korea, what are you all going to do? All this warmongering that so many people are doing right now, because they want to save face. Okay, see, what's happened is people have invested their emotions so much into Trump and into the Trump administration that they cannot see straight. That is what has happened. You have invested yourselves into someone who has sold you out. And now you cannot face that truth, because what that means is facing the fact that you made a mistake in judgment. Okay? Some people are strong enough to do that, others aren't. It takes a great deal of strength to stand up and say, hey, you know what? This guy, he's a globalist. And the way to understand this, in case you think this is your fault, it's not. It's not entirely your fault that you were fooled or conned into this. You had the alternative media shoving this down your throats. That Donald Trump was an actual anti-globalist, which was bunk from the get-go. You had the mainstream media putting across this idea that he was anti-establishment, that he was going to put Hillary Clinton in prison. Okay? They forced you to become polarized. you have to understand that presidents are not elected, they are selected. Okay? They are selected by other people, powerful people with money. Do you really think that Donald Trump would have been allowed near the presidency if he couldn't be co-opted? Now, granted, none of us were expecting him to launch a war in the Middle East. Excuse me. No one was expecting that he would launch a war in the Middle East this way. Because at the start of his term, he had people like General Flynn by his side. He had Steve Bannon by his side. You see? But now he doesn't. So the mask has dropped. That is what has happened. You were conned. You might not want to believe this, but you were. This is not a 4D chess move. This is not a 9000D chess move. None of that is going on here. This is all from that's a hallucination from your own imaginings because you're trying to preserve. You're trying to preserve your idea in your brain of some unimpeachable individual. Okay? You're trying to preserve this idea that Donald Trump was a good guy and that really that's what's going on. He's just being duped or he's being whatever else. That is not the case. You have veterans right across the board, right across the political establishment, the political divide. People that were veterans, people like Tulsi Gabbard, standing up and saying this is wrong. We should not invade Syria. You have veterans who were US Marines who were pro-Trumpers who are saying this is wrong. Your veterans went and fought and some of them died for you. Many of them bled for you. They have more balls than most of you that are sitting behind your keyboards as keyboard warriors. Anyone that has put on a uniform is saying at this point, we do not want to go to war. So, but other people that are still touting the Trump train, right, that are still saying, hey, you know what, this guy's different. People that are touting that line, people that want to preserve their political ideology, are denigrating veterans, US American veterans that fought for them. Let's understand that a second. Okay? Before you all start getting bent out of shape about what I'm saying here. I don't care. Let me make this perfectly clear. I don't care if it hurts your feelings. I don't care about my feelings, okay? I care about the truth. Because there's too many people out there that are expecting everyone else to just not question what is going on. I am not going to be one of those people. I am not going to compromise my principles for a political ideology. I will not do that. That is not going to happen in my lifetime, I'm sorry. Now, if you don't want to be a free-thinking individual that questions official narratives, because that's what we were all about, remember? If you don't want to be one of those people that has a scintilla of intellect and says, hold on a second, I don't believe the bunk that is coming out of this nonsense. Okay? I don't want to be pro-war. right, then your best bet is to get off this channel. I am telling you this, because you will not gain anything from what I'm saying. And I have no interest in talking to people who are thicker than two posts. None. Okay? I am here, this channel is here, to speak truth to power, not to become part of the power structure. Understand that. And if you want to be a good little pet, a good little slave to your masters, then you can carry on the war drum train. But I am not going to do that. Okay? It's very simple. You have a moral choice to make here. Why is it a moral choice to make? Because we've already seen it's different. Listen, I can understand if this was pre-Iraq war, okay? If people were unsure at that point in time because their government, everything they were doing, all the lies, was not exposed, okay? I could understand that then. Because then you have an untested situation and you can have a debate about, well, should we go into Syria? Shouldn't we go into Syria? Right? But at this point in time, we have seen the Iraq war, we have seen the situation in Afghanistan, we have seen the situation in Libya. You look right across the Middle East and it is a complete mess because of American foreign policy. And that foreign policy was drawn up in 1996. Again, for specifically the Prime Minister of Israel, or the person who is today's Prime Minister in Israel. Okay? If you don't want to face the facts, if you don't want to face the truth, please, again, feel free to leave. Okay? But for those people that are prepared and willing to understand the truth of the matter, that aren't going to get conned, that are against being conned, that want to know what is going on, hey, stick around. I welcome people with intelligence. Even if you disagree with me on certain points, right? If you disagree with me on certain points, I don't mind that. But you have to be using your brains. Not just going along with war propaganda or other types of propaganda that are coming out the mainstream. Again, it's no accident that the mainstream media loves the fact that Trump is now a war hawk, that he's a neocon. That is not an accident. So please, look at this. Keep these things in mind. The people that were so anti-Trump, how come they've suddenly turned into Trump supporters overnight? And why is it that Trump supporters right across the board are outraged? You might want to think about that. But as I say, the plan here is for a full-scale ground invasion. 150,000 troops being put in place in Syria to invade. And it's going to happen very shortly, unless people start standing up and speaking out against it. If you have a scintilla of morality, you should be speaking out against this. This argument, that, oh, look, this terrible thing happened and that's why we're responding, based on faulty intelligence, right? That's why we're responding. Well, what about all the other atrocities that are happening right across the world? What about the situation that just happened today in Egypt, where over 30 Christians were killed in Egypt? Should we be invading Egypt? Should we be invading the entire Middle East? Should we be invading African countries like Nigeria, where Boko Haram are? It's time to think a little bit, people. Okay? You can't stay asleep your whole life just accepting dogmas and narratives just because you want them to be true. That's called having cognitive bias. You want to deprogram yourself from that as much as possible to think logically. Anyway, that's just about all that I've got to say on this. But I hope that's been informative for you in some sense. I know part of it was me just ranting angrily, but it is so incredibly important that we get these points across to people who don't understand what is going on, people who are blind to absolute reality. Okay, this is what have I been talking about for the last 7 months? Objective reality versus subjective reality. If you haven't learned from those things I've been speaking about, then I don't know what the hell you've been doing on my channel for the last while. I really don't. Objective truth, objective reality matter. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Take good care of yourselves and God bless you.